In today's world, with public speakers that we see, most often probably being politicians, it's hard to believe that ethics and public speaking go together. Using the Pocket Guide to Public Speaking, O'Hare and Rubenstein's 7th edition PowerPoint slides to go along with Chapter 5, Ethical Public Speaking, I, Dr. Heidi, am going to explain to you how to be an ethical speaker, even when it seems like the world is full of unethical speakers. First, ethics is derived from the Greek word ethos. You may hear ethos, pathos, and logos referred to in this class and in other classes. Ethics means character. Ethos is an appeal of reliability or credibility. Positive ethos includes being trustworthy, competent, objective, well-prepared, and enthusiastic toward your audience. I know it's hard to imagine sometimes, but really being enthusiastic towards your speech and your topic ultimately makes you enthusiastic toward your audience and allows you to give a better presentation. Audiences trust a speaker who has source credibility. So not even your own credibility per se, although you can use that as well. You also want to have credibility in the sources that you are using. You should have a solid grasp of the subject, sound reasoning skills, be honest and straightforward, and genuinely interested in the listener's welfare. If you don't know an answer or you don't know some information, if someone asks you after your speech, don't be afraid to say, I don't know, but I can look that up for you and I'll get back to you. Respect your listeners' values. Listeners have a lot of different values. Sometimes they match with yours and sometimes they don't. Our ethical conduct reflects our values, but the values between you and the audience can conflict. So it's difficult to talk about certain topics. You want to anticipate that your audiences will always have a range of values and demonstrate respect for those values. It's not necessary to agree with other people's values, but it is necessary to respect them. You want to contribute to positive public discourse. Public discourse involves issues of importance to the community. So these are things we talk about publicly. Ethical speech advances constructive goals. So you want to steer clear of being invective or using verbal attacks, avoid arguments that target a specific person, and avoid arguments built upon fallacies. Fallacies is something we'll probably talk about when we get to logos or logic. But a fallacy is really a false reason for something. Use your rights of free speech responsibly. This is something that's essential for anyone who is taking the stage to give a speech. The First Amendment does guarantee the freedom of speech, but certain types of speech are still considered illegal. Incitement or fighting words, defamatory speech, speech that invades a person's privacy, or hate speech, something that is offensive or verbally or non-verbally through communication toward or to others. When is language considered defamatory? When you have, public speakers requires reckless disregard for the truth. Private persons, it's easier to assert claims of defamation because the speaker has the burden of proving truth. In other words, with a public figure, their life is public. With a private person, their life is not public, so you must prove a burden of proof in order to not defame someone. You want to observe ethical ground rules as a speaker. You want to infuse dignity and integrity into your speeches. Dignity ensures that your listeners feel respected, just like those values we were talking about. Integrity signals your incorruptibility. In other words, you are not corrupted by an outside source when you are presenting your materials. You want to adhere to the pillars of character. Remember, ethos, ethics is defined as character. So you want to be trustworthy, respectful, responsible, and fair. You also need to make sure that you are avoiding plagiarism. This is not just essential in college situations. This is essential in life. You cannot take someone else's information, someone else's ideas, and use them as your own. So that would be presenting another person's ideas as your own. Using others' ideas or words without acknowledging them is also considered plagiarism. And copying material directly from a source. In college, plagiarism can get you in trouble for your grade. In life, it could be getting you in trouble or getting you reprimanded or fired from a job. So, how do we avoid plagiarizing? What we do is called orally acknowledging sources, or oral citations. With an oral citation, just like I did at the beginning of this presentation, I acknowledge my source out loud. Each type of source, you want to include all or at least part of the following, so somebody else could look up your sources if they wanted to. You want to include a type of source, author or origin of the source, title or description of the source, and the date of the source. You also want to include all of the references in a bibliography. In my class, you would hand in a paper copy or upload a paper copy of your bibliography. You won't always be able to do this in a public speaking situation in your professional life. So then you would want to put the bibliography at the end of your presentational aid. So not only orally citing it, but also citing it in writing. Again, just in case someone else wants to look up the information. Websites are not exempt. You must cite websites. Common knowledge is an exception, and this is information known by many people. So something like rain is wet, yeah, that's common knowledge. People know that. Rain is water falling from the sky. Those things are common knowledge, and you don't have to find a source to cite that. If you go into a further explanation of rain, then you're going to have to start citing your sources. Citing quotations, paraphrases, and summaries. So there's three ways to present someone else's ideas. You can use direct quotations, so you're repeating their information verbatim. You can paraphrase, restating someone else's ideas, or you can summarize, which is briefly overviewing another's ideas. Fair use, copyright, and ethical speaking. Copyright is a legal protection for authors and artists. Essentially, they are copyrighting their intellectual property or their thoughts and what they have said. Copyrighted materials may require permission. Things that are not subject to copyright are information that is available in public domain works and federal government publications. Often, if you are just using the copyrighted materials for one use, say it's for a class situation, then you can usually use it just by saying, this information was found in such and such source, written by this person. However, if you're going to use copyrighted materials for frequent or public communication, then you will want to make sure that you do not infringe on their copyright. There is a doctrine of fair use. So, like I explained, it permits limited use of copyright works, and no permission is needed for the purposes of, like I said, scholarship or teaching, criticism or comment, news reporting, or research. In other words, you don't need to ask somebody's permission for any of these to use their copyrighted materials, but when in doubt, cite it at the very least. Of course, you should be citing all of your external materials, but that's at the very least. If you need to have permission to use somebody's copyrighted materials, that would be another case. So, number 3, you want to provide credit even if it's fair use. So, using the copyright symbol is required when you're using a visual aid like this one. Creative Commons licenses. There still must be an attribution to the author. You want to do something that's non-commercial for non-commercial purposes only, and no derivative works, only verbatim works. Okay, so you're using the verbatim information with the copyright symbol when you're putting it on your visual or presentational aid. Ethics can be a tricky subject, but hopefully you've gained some information about how to be more ethical as a speaker in the future. Hopefully, none of you will be politicians like some of those that we hear today that use quite a bit of unethical public speaking.